Right. Let's do a quick breakdown of this latest tutorial in Skillet AI. This is all about video generation. If you have been paying attention in the last weeks or months, you've probably been hearing about Google's VO3. This is a very powerful tool for generating incredibly lifelike videos with sound in one go. And what we're going to go through in this breakdown is how can you start with a submitted form, a very basic input where you just type in your idea, you describe the type of video you want, and you drop your email. And that basically automatically gets sent via API to Google VO3. We are basically going to poll for the results. And if something goes wrong, we get an error message. If it goes well, the new video gets emailed to us. So if you've used Google VO3 before, you probably know that you need to access it from the web. You either have to create an account with Google, or in this case, we're going to connect via Replicate. I'm a huge fan of Replicate. I'm not being paid by them. There's no sponsorship. I'm just a very happy user of Replicate. And what Replicate does is it basically lets you create an account on their site. And their site is a one-to-many where you have many different generative AI tools all under one roof. And you can basically use any of them via API. And instead of me having to create multiple accounts and manage all the different passwords and credit cards and invoices and whatever, I just create an account on Replicate. I'm not going to go into the details here, but essentially once you're connected, you get an API token. For example, if I type in the word video, you can see they have a lot of different video models, and Google VO3 is just one of them. In this example, we're actually going to use VO3 Fast. The reason why is building this out, I've tested this quite a bit. Every single VO3 video is $6. It's not a bad value. They're very high quality videos, but I've probably had to run it like 10 times. And rather than paying $60, I wanted to pay less. So I plugged in VO3 Fast, which is about half the cost. But you could update this to do either. And then ultimately where you end up at the end is you get a video. All right, so let's just play a quick example video. The prompt that I put in just said, let's see what it said. A dog gives advice to a puppy about how to beg for treats. Just a silly idea. All right, so let's do an actual breakdown of what we're doing here. Very easy to set up a Google form. If you've never used Google Forms, if you have a Google account, you just go to, I actually don't remember, I guess it's docs.google/forms. I just Google searched Google Forms. Very easy to configure the inputs. And then what you can do is have all of the inputs every time this form is submitted automatically get added as a new row to a responses spreadsheet. All right, so the first node that we have in here is a trigger that anytime a new row is added to our Google Sheet, it's going to run this automation. That hands off to OpenAI. And in OpenAI, we've basically prompted it to say, you're a video director. You craft really short cinematic prompts for generative video, right? So what it does is it takes the simple idea that you have, a dog gives advice to a puppy about how to beg for treats, and it's going to actually build the entire prompt that you need. It takes some experience to write good prompts. It's going to write a great prompt for us. So we're using two different sub prompts. We have a system prompt, which explains what it should be doing. It explains the format it should provide, the outputs. It gives it guidelines. These are basically our system instructions. And then further down, we're actually passing in dynamically what is the idea and what is the vibe that was in the Google Sheet. And then it just says, based on what you have, generate the prompt, return a JSON object. So when this ends up running, what you get is in a warmly lit kitchen, a scruffy old golden retriever sits upright on a mat, rising a pod dramatically, blah, 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 right? It does a really good job at basically upgrading this very basic prompt and this vibe of funny, and it writes everything for you, right? So you don't need to be super skilled or super talented at writing cinematic prompts. You can have this do it for you. Here we're setting our API key. This is where once you've created your account on Replicate, you'd want to put your API key in here. And then every time we're running this Replicate generation, you can see we're passing in the API key from that reference. All right, so this is how we're essentially getting this to work. Let's go into the details. So the details in here are we're making a standard API call. It's a post. Here's the link to VO3 Fast. If you want to update this to VO3, you can change that. We're passing in an authentication token. We're passing in the prompt dynamically, and we're saying we're sending this as raw JSON, right? And this is going to work great. Okay, in terms of what happens next. So when you generate a prompt, when you pass a prompt to Replicate, it takes some time. It might take about a minute, maybe slightly less because we're using fast, maybe 40 seconds. So you don't want your generation to just sit and wait because maybe something goes wrong and it takes a little bit longer, or there's a little bit more load because lots of people are using it at a given moment. So instead, we have this loop. This is a very important concept in programming where you basically do something over and over until a condition is met. So in this case, we are going to wait 10 seconds. Then we're going to ping Replicate again. This time, instead of initiating a new generation, we're just checking, hey, what's the status of this other one? And then we have an if statement. So if the status is equal to succeeded, it means it's done. It's going to run up to the stop part. If that's not true, it's going to come down here. Then it's going to say, does the status equal failed? If the status equals failed, we're going to get an email message sent to us. If it doesn't equal failed, it's going to wait 10 more seconds and do it again. So what should happen is it should poll. It should not find the success results yet. It should wait 10 seconds. It should poll again. It might do that 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And when it finally gets success, it pops up here. Then we're actually fetching the finished asset or assets, and then it gets emailed to us. So the email nodes are really simple. At the beginning here, we're collecting the person's email address, right? And basically, you can email it to yourself. But basically, this is just saying attached as your finished AI AI generation, we have the attachments, great. And then here we have the error message. Your AI generation failed. Something went wrong. Please try again. So this is relatively simple, but if you've never the Replicate API, this is a really good starting point. I tried to keep it simple enough that anyone could get this working and figure it out. The hard part is you got to get an API key and you need to make a successful API call. And once you have that working, this extra set of code is your safeguard that it's going to pull, it's going to work consistently. If it fails, it's going to let you know. This is where just with some developer experience, you can build in some safeguards to make sure this goes as expected. And if you figure this out, there are many very cool ways to extend this core lesson into a lot of other things. You could potentially have a split and you could ping different versions in Replicate. So we happen to be using VO3. There's a ton of other video models. How do I know VO3 is going to be the best for any given prompt? It might not be, right? I might want to send it to CDance 1 Pro. I might want to send it to Halio 2. I might want to send it to Kling, right? So you could easily extend this where it's basically sending to multiple models. It's polling them separately. And then instead of it just emailing you, maybe it publishes it to a Google Drive and then you just get a link to the drive. Maybe it writes the code for a web page and then all the videos are embedded on the web page and it emails you when they're all done and then you can look at them. Or maybe you connect a YouTube node and it automatically publishes it to a YouTube playlist and then it emails you the link when it's done. There's a ton of different things you can do, but in the world of N8N automation, being able to make a successful API call is a massive unlock. I'm personally really passionate about Gen AI, so I wanted to use this Replicate example, but this exact same structure you could use to pretty much query any API, right? You put your API key in, you make the request, you pull the results, you do something with the results when they're done. All right, so hopefully if you have been coming to Skillet AI to try to learn some of these core skills, this is an awesome place to start. You're gonna learn about API calls, you're gonna learn about polling, what to do in the case of errors. Again, there's a lot of meat on the bone here. So hopefully this goes well for you. And this is just the start. Can't wait to see what all of you build for this example automation.